for not being a follower. I said, thank you for not being a follower, because you.
That creator spoke beautifully about his daughter and her behavior, and his message about not being a follower is super important. And I have a little story to kind of piggyback on that, and kind of understanding that it's only through teaching our children that it's okay to be the fullness of yourself, and you don't have to do what other people are doing, and it's okay not to follow, especially if you think they're doing something wrong, that's going to help engage in critical thinking in the world today. So when my son was about 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old, he was taking a martial arts class. It was a Taekwondo class in a rural part of Michigan. And it was a multi-age class. So you had a bunch of students of all different ages. And he was in one of the younger classes. I think he was maybe a yellow belt at the time, maybe moving up to orange, but right around there, still a lower level belt. And what was happening is that when the instructor would speak Korean, he would expect the students to be able to follow his instructions, but he noticed that they weren't following his instructions. They would do whatever his hands were doing. But if he was working with a student or involved with something and had to shout out instructions in Korean, he needed them to follow the instructions. And he was getting a little frustrated because students weren't listening. They weren't following the instructions. So he did an activity. He called all of the students, and we're talking from like 5-year-old, right around 5-year-old is when a lot of them started, all the way up through like young adult, to sit in their rows in the class. And the lower belts were in the very front, and then they sat in belt order till you got to the upper belts in the back. And he's like, okay, he goes, we have a little bit of a listening problem. He goes, you guys are looking at my body language instead of following my instructions, and I can't always rely on body language. So we're going to make sure you guys understand what I'm saying when we speak Korean. So he did one or two small things, but what he did, he was smart. The guy was smart. He still did some of the hand movements. So he did like one or two things, which was like stand up, and he kind of moved his hands up, a little bit when he said stand up. And then he did one or two other things, and then he goes, cheery up, and he goes like this with his hands, just real briefly, like he was doing it very subtly at his sides. And everyone in the class sat down. So up until this point, everybody had been following the instructions and things seemed to be going okay, but he was using the hand signal still. But he says, cheery up, and did the thing with his hands, and everyone in the class sits down except my son. And I'm like, why isn't he sitting down? I'm like, sit down. Sit down. Like, I'm like, oh my God, my kid didn't pay attention. It's my kid. My kid's the problem, right? That's what I'm thinking. And so he's like, okay. He goes, obviously, we all didn't get it. We're gonna try it again. He goes, okay. Everyone, he gave the instructions in Korean to stand up and did the hand movement. And then he goes, okay, cheery up. And he does the hand movement again. And everybody sits down. And my son still didn't get it. My son's still standing up. And I'm like, oh, and he's the only one. He's the only one standing up. And I'm horrified. I'm like, whose kid is this? Who's got the kid that's not listening? Like, I was so embarrassed. I wanted the floor to open up. I could not believe my kid was the one that wasn't listening. And he looks at my son. He goes, Aiden, are you listening to what I'm saying? And my son goes, yeah. And he goes, okay, we're going to try this again. So he has everyone stand up, and then he says, cheery up, and he does the hands down again. Once again, everyone sits down except my kid. I'm like, I'm leaving him here. I've never been so embarrassed in my whole life. I was thoroughly embarrassed. And the guy, he was a real tall, he was a real big guy. And he's looking at Aiden. Everyone's sitting down. Everyone's looking at Aiden like, look at this stupid kid still standing up, And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a whole conversation. He's going to call me in. My kid's the problem. And he looks at Aiden and he says, Aiden, what are you doing? And Aiden goes, I'm standing at attention. And the guy goes, Aiden, what am I telling you to do? And you could see Aiden kind of got nervous because remember, he's like 7 years old, maybe 8. And my son goes, you're telling me to stand at attention. And the guy looks around at everyone else and he goes, yes, that's exactly what I was telling you. All of you sat down because you were looking at my hands, but my mouth and my instruction was telling you to stand at attention, and none of you did it except Aiden. And Aiden did it 3 times, even when I was calling his integrity into question. Meanwhile, my whole persona, like, that's my kid. That's my kid. That's my kid that passed. That's my kid that did it. I'm so proud. But I also made sure to have a conversation with him afterwards about how proud I was of him to do that. And the instructor did as well after this little engagement. And he told Aiden, one of the scariest things you can ever do is to stand up when everyone else is sitting down. If everyone else is telling you you're doing the wrong thing and you're like, no, this is the right thing, and I have to stand up for it, then you are always doing the right thing. and the courage it takes to do that. He told Aiden, he goes, I hope you never lose that courage. And that sent a message to me. Like, I've always been a very independent person. I was always the eccentric one. Michelle's the weird one. Michelle's the weird girl. So I grew up with that whole mentality that I always stood out, right? And I had no problem standing up. Like, I had done that several times throughout my educational career. But I didn't realize that how I was teaching it to my kids. I didn't realize that just the nature of me being like that was teaching that to my kids, and how important it is to set that as a role model, because I wasn't actively teaching that to my kids. It wasn't something I was actively doing. It was just, if something came up, I'd be like, well, you know, you always have to do the right thing. If other people are doing the wrong thing, it's called integrity. You know, you always want to make sure that you're not the one going along with everyone else if they're doing the wrong thing, because then you'll get in trouble too. Like, we tried to do it in a kid sense, but they also saw me doing it. They saw like how mommy behaved. And I think that's very important, because there's a lot of role models today and things with social media and everything else. Like, you're just supposed to follow along. You're just supposed to do what everybody else is doing. Even if you know it's the wrong thing, or it doesn't feel good, or it doesn't feel right, or it makes you uncomfortable, like, you're just supposed to go along. And I'm fortunate enough that my husband and I managed to raise all of our kids, for the most part, I think, to be that type of person, to be like, no, you're not saying that. You're saying stand up. You might be moving your hands, but you're saying stand up. And it was just a really good metaphor for the idea that sometimes everyone in the world is going to be telling you better sit down. And if you know that's not the right thing, then you better keep standing up.